right, don't you just love it when you can see far ahead of other people, and then people then begin to sort of start saying the same things that you were saying? Well, this week, Chris Christie was at an event at the Hudson Institute, and this exchange took place. It might sound a little bit familiar. Check this out.
I have worked in the federal government for nearly 25 years. I worked for Homeland Security. I took a stand when President Trump was elected. I didn't like what was going on within that department. I did what I was asked to do as a federal employee, speak truth to power. Governor, I was fired for blowing the whistle on national security issues. I lost my family, okay? But I didn't lose my dignity. Sir, you were part of that administration. As much as I want to be there for you now, how can I be here? How can I cast a ballot for you when you were an enabler? I'm sorry, but that's,
okay.
that's
I think you got the question.
I think
now?
I got the gist. Yeah. Look, elections are choices. And I made a choice in 2016 that I didn't want Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States. And I tried to beat Donald Trump in the primary. I want you to remember, he was not my first choice to be president. I was my first choice. That didn't work out. But it was a mistake. I don't know how old you are. You look about my age. I don't know if you've never made any mistakes in your life. I suspect you probably have. I think the difference is, do you admit your mistakes? And you know, anybody else who claims a purity test on any issue politically in our country, be happy to have the conversation with you and see if you pass it. But I think what matters more is once you realize you've made a mistake, what do you do about it? I'm not standing up there trying to cozy up to him. I'm not standing there trying to rationalize his conduct. I'm not standing there saying I'm going to pardon him or I'd support him if he were a convicted felon. So, yeah, if it's a purity test, I think that the majority, the overwhelming majority of our party will fail it. But
No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
I can't get in a debate today, but if you qualify, get 80,000 donors, I'll get you on the stage and I'll debate you then.
All right, so that was Chris trying to be a little cute, but you noticed there was a little tone change there from Chris Christie. It's a little bit different than a couple of years ago on ABC This Week, September 2021. Y'all remember this?
I want to get another Republican perspective here from Sarah Isger. You know, there's seeing debate there. Chris believes the party's over time moving in his direction. Yvette disagrees.
I think that perhaps we will finally see what we didn't get to see in 2016, where there were 17 candidates, nobody dropped out so that you could have the one-on-one versus Donald Trump. Perhaps it looks like Donald Trump is going to run again. We're certainly told that by all of his advisors and by all accounts from him. If it is Chris Christie versus Donald Trump in the Republican primary, Republicans will have a choice. And certainly Donald Trump is in some ways at his weakest that he's been since he left the White House, and in other ways, certainly what he has said and Trumpism has picked up within the party. It will be up to Governor Christie to make the case that there is somewhere else to go. But I do think if Trump runs, he may be alone in that lane, and that could be helpful.
I'm sorry, Republican Party, they made their choice.
Yes.
And I appreciate the speech, Governor, but the reality is this. You have to admit, Sarah, you have to admit the role that you played in putting the person in leadership who is driving conspiracy theories. It's one thing to condemn them after the fact, but you have to own up to the role that you played in putting the person in power. The time
We both ran campaigns against
No. Let me finish.
First off, I don't
one second.
First off, I don't admit anything to you.
Can I finish?
First off, I'm not admitting you. And second, I ran against Donald Trump in 2016.
You also coached him for the debate
against Donald
You
Trump in
ran against,
2016.
here's the deal, you ran against him. But when a person has principles, morals, and values, they do not support them even if you lose.
Right.
And what they say is, I choose patriotism and the country over party and power. And the problem was too many Republicans chose power in riding with Donald Trump as opposed to patriotism in America.
I'll sleep fine tonight with you judging my morals.
Well, guess what? As a voter, as a voter who has 13 nieces and nephews, what I also want to see in America are Republicans and Democrats who have the guts to stand up to narcissists, to folks who lie, to folks who sit here and lead a country in the wrong direction. And what that man has unleashed on this country, any Republican who stood with him has to own it and accept the role that they played.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'll accept the role that I played in the 2016 election running against him, and I'll accept the role...
Let him finish his point now. Let him finish his point.
And I'll accept the role that I played in my belief that Hillary Clinton was not the right person to be president. We all get to make choices, Roland, in this democracy. I made my choice. I'm on record of my choice, and I'm not walking away from my choice. But it does not preclude me from being able to be critical when the person that I did support does things that I am against. And so this false choice that you're trying to set up,
It's not false.
It's a false choice, and one that the American people are not going to buy either.
Roland, let me just press one other point. Right now, I would argue that the fact that so many Americans can't buy into simple facts is probably the biggest existential threat we face to our democracy. So when somebody speaks up for that, isn't it something to be praised?
Facts are critically important, but again, when you support someone who said fake news, when you were truthful and then push that, then when you have the networks and the conservative radio talk show hosts, that whole echo chamber driving that's the problem. I am a native of Texas who is still registered there, and I am dealing with Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, who is consistently lying and making things up, and you're dealing with that. I'm dealing with people who are changing textbooks, well, here's the deal. I have a very basic principle since I've been a journalist. If you do good, I'll talk about you. If you do bad, I'll talk about you. At the end of the day, I'll talk about you. And somebody has to say what others are afraid to say.
Sarah, you get the last word.
If you want to persuade...
I don't need to hear what Sarah had to say because it was BS when she said it. Here's the whole deal here, Greg. Christie keeps saying 16, 16. You notice how he don't want to talk about 20. Who prepared Trump for the debates in 2020? Christie. Who campaigned for Trump in 2020? Christie. And the fact of the matter is, Chris Christie ain't fooling me. If Donald Trump gets that nomination, guess who's gonna say I'm voting for Donald Trump? Chris Christie. James Baker said it. Bill Barr was on television saying all this stuff about how the man don't read. He got a small vocabulary. Frankly, how dumb he is, how petty he is, how childish he is. But when asked if he's a nominee, who you gonna vote for? Republican nominee. Mitch McConnell, same thing. So I don't want to hear from any of these people. I'm trying to explain to all these crazy black folks out here who are, and I get you don't like certain things that have happened, but I am very clear about evil. I'm very clear about people who ain't got no interest in black folks. And the Christies of the world, I'm telling every black person, these people are going to choose power every single time.
Absolutely. Of course, Roland. I mean, what can any of us do but agree with you on that? By the way, I just left about 1,000 black male teachers downstairs here in Philadelphia. It's the Black Male Educator Conference, and so many of them coming up to me said, "Tell Roland, we watch all the time. We support us as the Black Star Network." So I wanted to pass that on before I said anything else.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But who can say? I mean, it reminds me of something that our friend and brother and frequent, guest here with you, Cleo Monago, says. Roland Martin has a moral compass. You may not agree with everything he says. You may agree with much of what he says. But one thing you don't have to have any question about is he has a moral compass. What you said to Chris Christie there on ABC News is, and what he was confronted with that man who lost his job and his family, as he says, is the fact that Chris Christie has no morals. It's what you said. He's a politician. Now, of course, when he was talking to that guy, he was right. Of course, I was wrong. I made a mistake. But let's be clear. You still will stand up and salute whoever is going to feed your ego, feed your bank account, feed your craving for power. And when you confronted him finally there on Stephanopoulos' show, you confronted him with the one thing that any politician must ultimately look in the mirror and have to ask her or himself, am I willing to compromise my values? In Chris Christie's case, the answer is not yes or no, because he has no values, except he wants to be in the room.
And that's the thing, Reese, that I need for a lot of folks to understand. Again, in the next hour, I'm going to show this sort of back and forth I had today on Instagram with some folks who are forever whining and complaining about Vice President Kamala Harris, what they say Biden Harris not doing, and then when you hit them with the facts, by point, then they want to move the goalposts as well. And I'm trying to get these folks to understand, politics is a zero-sum game. Somebody is going to win. And when you have folks who are willing to, look, Nikki Haley went on CNBC and said all these things, how bad Trump is. And then when was asked, if he's a nominee, you gonna support him? She said, I will support the Republican nominee. These people are going to fall in line, and they are going to forget January 6th. They're going to forget all that sort of stuff like that, and they're going to fall in line behind that man because they ain't got no problem with his evil ass being back in the White House.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's a matter of them forgetting about it. I think it's a matter of them saying that it's not a deal breaker. It's not a red line, because they're going to be in power and they're going to be able to put their friends in power. I mean, they're already recruiting hundreds of people to immediately be installed in the administration if Donald Trump or any Republican were to win. And so this has always been about power for the Republican Party. It's not about morals. It's not about the high ground. It's not even about anything, as much as these people pretend to be evangelicals and a number of things. It's not even about that. It's just about power and money. And I think that Chris Christie has created a lane that he's the only one left standing in so far in terms of the Republican candidates to be the anti-Trump. But the reality is he was right there in lockstep with Trump until it was no longer politically expedient for him when he decided to run for president. And no matter what any of these people do, playing for second place, which there is no such thing when it comes to being the nominee, they're all going to fall in line as well. And so that's the reality of the Republican Party. The Democratic Party operates a little bit differently. The Democratic base operates a little bit differently. The independents, the disaffected operate a little bit differently. And that's why Democrats have a different challenge than Republicans do.
Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting to hear Chris Christie's answer to that gentleman when he said that he had made the choice. He made the choice that Hillary Clinton, he didn't want to see Hillary Clinton in office. Well, the problem with that 2016 example is that we knew that Donald Trump was crazy in 2016. And in fact, we knew it right at the moment that he announced for president, when he got up and said something completely bigoted about Mexican immigrants. I mean, you wanted to align yourself and brand yourself to that, Chris Christie. And then we had the violence at the campaign rallies all during 2016. So I don't understand what was the confusion about 2016. You can't tell me that Hillary Clinton was a worse choice than somebody who was completely crazy and was showing themselves completely crazy at that time. Remember the interview that he did where he basically tried to act like Donald Trump tried to act like he didn't know who David Duke was, which was completely ridiculous. And Chris Christie wanted to brand himself to that. So I mean, you might as well just admit at some point that you just want to be on the side of the person who's winning to get some job in the administration or whatever the play was. That is what typical Republicans do that are supporting Trump. They're trying to position themselves for some sort of job in the administration. That's really what it boils down to. They don't want to be outside of that club should Trump win again. But the idea that you were confused, that you made a mistake and you didn't know who this guy was in 2016 is quite laughable, actually.
And don't forget, Christie wanted to be his attorney general. That's the job that he really wanted, and he didn't get.